It's truly remarkable when an NFL front office drafts the proper players for a given scheme and puts all of those players in a position to not only succeed, but also elevate their talents and those around them. Unfortunately, there are also situations where a NFL front office will draft an extremely talented individual with tremendous upside, only to absolutely decimate any shred of potential that individual may have ever had. Today we're going to be discussing multiple players who are extremely talented individuals whose talents are being absolutely wasted on teams or whose potential is being absolutely crippled by these teams. Before we get to the content, make sure you subscribe and turn on our notifications for a chance to win a PlayStation 5, and for additional entries, follow us on Instagram and on Twitter. Now that we got all that out of the way, break! Coming out of the NFL draft, Sam Darnold and Patrick Mahomes both shared a few similarities. Although they were both drafted a year apart, they both didn't really start for their franchises up until the same exact year. You see, both players were known for having a cannon of an arm. Both players were known for having a tendency of making questionable throws. But as a matter of fact, the only thing that Sam Darnold had over Patrick Mahomes that made him a slightly better prospect was the fact that he came out of a pro-style offense, whereas Mahomes came out of a spread offense. So what does that tell you? Well, I don't like saying that if Sam Darnold got drafted by the Kansas City Chiefs, he may have turned into the next Patrick Mahomes, because I don't think that's fair to say about anyone. But these two both did possess a similar skill set, and it's important to realize that if a player isn't put in the best position to succeed, then chances are that they're going to fizzle out the same way that Sam Darnold did. And I can't help but wonder what could have happened if Sam Darnold wasn't drafted by the New York Jets, a team that has been making questionable personnel decisions ever since they were able to draft Sam Darnold. I think it's very important to know that the entire fate of Sam Darnold's career was based upon the proper head coach getting their hands on him, putting him in a situation to successfully be able to read defenses and to mitigate his turnover-prone mistakes. But you see, that's the problem, and that's where Mahomes and Darnold differ. Patrick Mahomes got to spend a year behind Alex Smith and learn how NFL defenses work and how the Kansas City Chiefs offense works, while watching Alex Smith completely decimate opposing defenses under arguably the greatest offensive coach in the entire NFL. And Sam Darnold, well, he got Adam Gase. It doesn't help that the New York Jets went out and signed Le'Veon Bell to a max contract, got Sam Darnold absolutely no help on the offensive line as well, and didn't draft a wide receiver despite having a very weak wide receiver core up until the second round of the 2020 NFL draft. But by then, the damage has already been done, and Sam Darnold may be on his way out, so the New York Jets could potentially ruin another player's career. My only hope is that Sam Darnold goes to a franchise that would properly utilize him in the future. A team like the Pittsburgh Steelers to sit behind Ben Roethlisberger, or the Indianapolis Colts so he could be utilized by Frank Reich properly. There's many teams that need a quarterback this year, and giving up the second round pick for the player that was supposed to be the savior of New York doesn't necessarily sound like such a bad option. Up next, we have a player who is also a quarterback whose talent is being absolutely wasted on the Houston Texans in Deshaun Watson. And Deshaun Watson is a story that personally really upsets me. After having a rookie season where he was absolutely about to rewrite record books in his rookie year prior to him tearing his ACL, Deshaun Watson's Houston Texans seem to be the next contending team that every NFL team should be afraid of. A team that was composed of Deshaun Watson, a semi-decent offensive line, DeAndre Hopkins, and on the defensive side of the ball, you had Jadeveon Clowney and J.J. Watt, as well as a pretty good defensive back unit to carry the Houston Texans forward. Well, ultimately, hubris by coach Bill O'Brien to not pay Dwayne Brown, eventually trading his left tackle away, caused Deshaun Watson to be pressured many more times going forward, until the Houston Texans ultimately had to overpay and give up 2 first-round picks to trade for Laramie Tunsil to plug in that left tackle position, and eventually gave away DeAndre Hopkins practically for free and took back David Johnson instead. Yeah, Deshaun Watson is still trying to make it work with what he has, and yeah, this team would probably be winless without him under center, but I just can't help but feel bad for a player that was drafted into a remarkable situation that was just a quarterback away from contending for Super Bowls until Bill O'Brien screwed them over. The worst part is, despite a subpar season, they still don't have a first-round draft pick, and they're probably going to be in a similar position next year. You can't help but feel for the guy because he deserves way better than the situation that he's in, especially for the remarkable talent that he has. Up next, we have Ezekiel Elliott in a season that he's actually not performing too well in, and honestly, I can't really tell what the reason for that is. Could it be the fact that there's not really much of a passing game with Andy Dalton or Ben DiNucci under center? Or is it the fact that his head coach is completely incompetent and inept of creating good and sustainable game plans? It could also have to do with the fact that the Dallas Cowboys offensive line is completely battered and injured, and his quarterback and BFF is currently out due to a broken leg injury. Nevertheless, this is one of Ezekiel Elliott's worst seasons thus far, but I can't help but feel like it's because defenses are literally keying in on him because he's the only weapon that the Cowboys have, because the wide receivers that the Cowboys do have don't really get as much use as they should with subpar quarterback play. Don't get me wrong, the Cowboys probably have a top 5 wide receiver core, but they don't have everyone to sling them the rock. So as a result, I'd say that Ezekiel Elliott is having his talent wasted. Speaking of Cowboy wide receivers who's having their talent wasted, let's talk about Amari Cooper, a player that just signed a 4-year, $100 million contract extension before the Dallas Cowboys decided to draft CeeDee Lamb literally a mere 2 weeks later. By some miracle, Amari Cooper is having almost a 1,000-yard receiving season with 942 yards through the air at the time of this video and 5 touchdowns, despite the Dallas Cowboys having a revolving door at the quarterback position. Nevertheless, this could also do with the fact that Mike McCarthy loves to throw the ball, but I feel like Amari Cooper would have historic numbers if he had a decent QB getting him the ball, and a decent head coach properly game planning for the Dallas Cowboys. The Cowboys are at best a 6-win team in the lowly NFC East, and it's really a shame to see Amari Cooper and Ezekiel Elliott's talents go to waste, as this is by no means a contending playoff team. If we want to talk about wastes of talent, let's talk about Carson Wentz, because I feel like this is probably the most controversial pick on this entire list. Your opinion on Carson Wentz is one out of two things. Either his head coach is sabotaging him by giving him practically no receivers to throw to and putting him behind an offensive line that is practically a shell of its former self, or a player that just simply wasn't that good to begin with and is getting exposed by the fact that Jalen Hurts just took over his spot. Nevertheless, this is a player that was very productive in the past, especially when he had Frank Reich as his offensive coordinator. So to just having a multi-million-dollar quarterback sitting and holding a clipboard behind a rookie quarterback that is getting paid practically pennies in comparison to him is clearly a gigantic waste of talent. I really hope he gets traded to the Colts or something this offseason, because I feel like in the right position, Carson Wentz is a fantastic quarterback who was drafted number 2 overall and given a multi-million-dollar contract for a reason. Speaking of rookie quarterbacks, let's talk about Justin Herbert, who personally has shocked me of all people when I saw him drop back in NFL games. I never thought that this player would have this arm and this type of accuracy to get his remarkable wide receivers the ball on a consistent basis. Unfortunately, he's stymied by the fact that he has an inept head coach that is just truly horrible at managing in-game situations. Only a week ago, we saw Anthony Lynn attempt a halfback dive with 15 seconds left on the clock but no timeout, and then try to kick a field goal before the half, but believe it or not, he wasn't able to get it done because, well, math. Nevertheless, I feel like this kid has a remarkable future ahead of him. The Chargers have a fantastic roster ahead of them. They just have to make a really good head coaching hire this offseason, and they should be all good to go. Speaking about the Los Angeles Chargers, let's talk about Joey Bosa, a player that has given the Los Angeles Chargers 7.5 sacks and 27 solo tackles in about 11 games this season, although he has been dealing with some injury problems. I don't want to put all of this on Anthony Lynn, but it just seems like the Los Angeles Chargers don't know what they're doing. And before this season, I literally thought the Chargers were going to be at least a 13-win team, and yeah, they did lose some heartbreakers in the beginning of the season, but as I see Anthony Lynn make more and more decisions, I can't help but feel like a brand new head coach would do wonders for this Chargers organization. But I really highly doubt that they're going to do that because, well, they're the Chargers. What's that thing about Dean Spanos go again? And then we get to our final player on this list, J.J. Watt, A couple weeks ago, J.J. Watt said that he is not going to stick with a rebuilding Houston Texans team. And can you really blame him? Meanwhile, his brother is completely tearing up the NFL and is known as the best pass rusher in the NFL this season for the Pittsburgh Steelers. It'd be a nice story to see J.J. Watt go there after this season because he was so close to contention, but of course, Bill O'Brien decided to screw everything up. And those are 8 players who are getting their talents absolutely wasted this year in the NFL. If there's anyone that you feel like I left out, please let me know in the comment section down below. Aside from that, I'm your boy Mike, and I'm dropping our mic until our next upload.